Now, Ukraine says Russia launched an Iskander ballistic missile and over 100 drones overnight, even after U.S. President Donald Trump claimed that Moscow has agreed to halt attacks for a week. Now, Ukraine's Air Force claimed that Russia launched an Iskander-M ballistic missile from Voronezh region, as well as 111 strike drones on the night of January 30th.
To go to a meeting
the Air
over the
taxed after President Donald Trump claimed that Russia has agreed to halt attacks on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities for a week due to harsh winter conditions.
I personally asked President Putin not to fire into Kyiv and the various towns for a week, and he agreed to do that. And I have to tell you, it was very nice. A lot of people said, don't waste the call, you're not going to get that, and he did it, and we're very happy that they did it.
Ukraine is battling its harshest winter since the war began, and before Trump's announcement, Russian strikes killed at least 6 people in central and southern Ukraine. On Thursday, shelling hit Zaporizhia, Kherson, and President Zelensky's hometown. And this comes following a major drone attack on Odessa, sparking fires at an industrial site. The Ukrainian president said more than 450 apartment blocks in Kyiv are without heating. He's counting on U.S. support to secure the week-long pause in Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy grid.
We thank the American side for their efforts to stop the attacks on the energy sector at this time, and we hope that America will be able to ensure this more than 450 apartment buildings in several districts of Kyiv are without heating, most of them after the strikes.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz welcomed Truce efforts but strongly condemned Russia's systematic destruction of Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, stepping up military and energy aid. German Ambassador Heiko Thoms confirmed that 9 IRIS-T air defense systems have already been delivered, with more on the way. He said that Berlin is also sending 33 combined mobile heat and power plants to help. In Brussels, meanwhile, the European Union blacklisted Russia for money laundering risks. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says the move will raise costs for Russian banks. She has also said that it is working on the process of Ukraine joining the European Union.
The EU today blacklisted Russia for risk of money laundering. This will slow down and increase the costs of transactions with Russian banks. Work is also advancing on the 90 billion loan and the 20th sanctions package. Any measure that limits Russia's war funding must be on the table.
On the battlefield, Ukraine says it has received the bodies of 1,000 soldiers in the latest exchange with Russia. Moscow confirmed it received 38 bodies of its own troops. In Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed Emirati leader Mohammed bin Zayed. The visit comes ahead of the next round of talks in United Arab Emirates. And to discuss this further, we're now being joined live on the broadcast by Ben Iris, founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews, and also former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. And also joining us is Dr. Sergei Somileny, defense expert and director, European Resilience Initiative Center. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us on the broadcast. Ms. Iris, I'd like to come to you first. Now, Trump has said that, of course, he's talked to Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin has agreed to his request to halt attacks on Kyiv. How true do you think these are, and what do you expect from Moscow?
Well, I'm sure he had the conversation. This was from an unreported call that Trump put into Putin in the last days. And he dropped this bomb, so to speak, during a cabinet meeting. However, you know, it's like everything in this war, it's just words. That Putin has been launching a barrage of drones and missiles against Ukraine's energy infrastructure that started in the summer but has really escalated in the last few weeks, just as the coldest part of the year comes. And Ukraine is suffering already, like everybody else, from one of the coldest winters in at least a decade. Temperatures have fallen to -20, and the Ukrainian Meteorological Service just announced that they're going to fall another 10 degrees to -30 in the coming days.
Right.
And Putin is attempting to freeze Ukraine into submission. But as you reported last night, the drones and missiles continued, so there's no ceasefire yet.
All right. Dr. Suleimani, I would like to come to you now. Now, we just heard from Mr. Ayers that, of course, these are just talks, but we don't know if they are confirmed. So first, what is your analysis of these, first of all, these fresh attacks that Ukraine has reported, and does it even look like that there's going to be any halt from Moscow?
Well, we indeed have observed today, after Donald Trump's messages, attacks, aerial attacks in several regions in Ukraine, in Sumy, in Kharkiv, in Dnipro, and in Kherson region. They've just checked the reports. There are explosions in Kharkiv and in Dnipro regions. So there is no reason for Russia to stop pressuring Ukraine. There is not a reason for Russia to pretend they care about some sort of humanitarian aspects of war. That is what Russia tries to tell all the time. The moment when Russian missiles hit hospitals or residential area in Ukraine, press speaker of Kremlin, Peskov, says Russian army never hit civilians. That's what the Russians did in Syria. That's what the Russians did in Chechnya before. They hit civilians and then they tell, oh, we never hit civilians. How could you believe we would hit civilians? So now Russia wants to pressure Donald Trump into this humanitarian character, allegedly, of their war, and say, look, we are so humane, we want to stop. But the real reason, I think, indeed, the intensity of the missile attacks can reduce. Why? Because Russia has spent so many missiles, both ballistic and cruise missiles, during the last 2 months of almost continuous attacks, that they need to refill their arsenals. They cannot continue in that pace. And now they sell their inability to send 100 up to 200 missiles per night into Ukraine. They explain it by their allegedly humanitarian intentions, which they, of course, do not have.
Right, and you're also a defense expert, Dr. Suleimani, so I would like to ask you, how important is this winter phase attacks, considering the fact that just a week ago, U.S. President's former special envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, just said that Ukraine gets, if Ukraine gets through this winter, it will have the advantage in the war rather than Russia. Does this hold true?
Well, this winter is the hardest among all winters I have experienced in Ukraine. I'm in Kyiv now. We have like hours and hours of blackouts in Kyiv. It's the coldest winter and the longest blackouts. We have apartment blocks in Kyiv where temperature is just like +8 degrees during all the day, during -20 degrees temperatures outside. But the Russians' goal to force millions of people from Kyiv to flee and to create a picture of empty, abandoned city, they have not succeeded on that strategy. And I think they will not by now, because Kyiv has reinvented their energy system with a lot of additional generators, with additional sources of heat. And Kyiv will survive this winter, so Russians have not fully succeed on their goals.
All right, Mr. Ayers, now we know that Russian president has just welcomed Emirati leader Mohammed bin Zayed, and we know that the next talks are going to take place in United Arab Emirates. How positive do you think the talks are at this moment?
It remains stuck. It remains stuck on the status of Donbass, and Putin's dug his heels in there. He's insisting that the Ukrainian forces completely withdraw from this 15% of Donetsk region, part of the Donbass, that they don't occupy. And Zelensky is refusing to do that, and the two sides are at loggerheads. Ushakov, the foreign policy advisor to Putin, said actually there's a few more points. The control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station is something that still needs to be discussed or settled. But that's the key point. And the talks are continuing this weekend. The first ever trilateral talks, where all three of US, Russia, and Ukraine were at the table, just was begun in Abu Dhabi. And this weekend, the talks will continue in a bilateral format between Ukraine and Russia. And they're trying to sort this out. But I think we're very close. It all turns on the security guarantee that the States has offered. And I think if that is signed and approved by Congress, which is a key step, then Zelensky has secured the borders for post-war from another Russian invasion. And given that piece of the puzzle, then I think he's in a position where he might concede, following a referendum, to actually give up the last bit of Donbass. But we're very close. But I mean, as I say, it's extremely tense. The two sides are arguing, they can't agree.
All right, and considering the fact that there has been an advance, and if we do believe these talks have taken place between Trump and Putin about these halt attacks, do you think that could be the start of a ceasefire?
It would be a huge step forward. I mean, you know, there's been a lot of talk, but at the end of the day, Russia continues to bomb Ukraine every day. And if there was actually some physical ceasefire where rockets were stopped, then that would be you know, absolutely a dramatic step forward. However, as Sergei said, that you know, Russia is running low on missiles, and there are reports that now Russia is taking the missiles it's producing straight from the assembly line and firing them the same week, and that it needs a pause in order to restock, because it's been really hammering with everything it's got. And so it may be that they just have a supply problem and they've decided to take some goodwill by making this gesture, whereas actually pragmatically they had to stop anyway because they need to build some more missiles. But even then it's a temporary pause, because you know, the factories are going flat out and Russia's producing 2,000 missiles a year, so it can send several every day. And this is classic Putin negotiating tactics, where he hits you with missiles and then offers a short pause to look good and keep himself in the good books of Trump. But actually what he's going to do is he's going to continue smashing the energy in the middle of winter and try and cause a humanitarian crisis that puts pressure on Zelensky to actually do the deal on the Donbass.
All right. Also, I'll take that point. And Dr. Sumeleni, now, Ukraine has always said that they want a ceasefire before they go and progress with other talks. How positive do you think? Because Zelensky has said that he has welcomed Trump in this whole talk with Putin for halting these attacks. How advantageous do you think would it be for Ukraine, considering the fact that if there is a halt in attacks?
Well, Russia would be the main profiteer from a ceasefire, because Russia can reassemble their army, resupply their arsenals, and then break a ceasefire, is what Russia did many times. I remind you, during the pre-full-scale war period, there were about 300 of ceasefire agreements signed between Ukraine and Russia, and everyone was broken by Russia. Ukraine is in a position when it wants to defend itself, not to advance. And Russia is in a position when it wants to destroy the whole Ukraine. And the Russian authorities have mentioned that goal many times openly. Right. So in a ceasefire, Russia would increase its ability for a massive attack in 2 months, in 3 months, in 4 months, which is not in Ukraine's interest. So for Ukraine, it's important to continue hitting Russian oil industry and gas industry, which is the main income source for money for Russia, which Ukraine is doing now, and waiting for Russia to get out of money for their missile production and other things, which I think is quite realistic perspective.
All right. Well, of course, we'll have to wait and see and hope for better talks, because we do see a meeting between a Russian president and, of course, Emirati leader. And, of course, if these rumors of halt is true as well. But thank you so much to both of you for joining us on the broadcast and giving your perspective.
Thank you so much.